Okay, we're recording. Double checking that my glove touch thing actually works. So anyway, it's mid-November. It's cold out today. Not out in the morning, I'm out in the afternoon. It's I think 17 outside right now, and it's going to get colder this weekend because this November, Minnesota is going to have its widest temperature swings in Minnesota history. A couple of weeks ago, it was over 70 here. It's going to hit single digits. They're talking about a 70-degree temperature difference from highest to lowest temperatures in the span of a few weeks. But global warming's not real. There's no such thing as climate change. It's just a lie by scientists who want money. Anyway, so I was talking to my daughter today about food. Daughter's a foodie. I'm a foodie. And I'm starting to have some vegan leanings based on not cruelty to animals issues, but rather environmental issues and habitat issues, and trying to reduce the footprint and improve the sustainability of our diets. So I don't have a thing about, don't be cruel to animals. I'm a firm believer in Anthony Bourdain's rule that if it's slower than me and stupider than me and tastes good, I'm going to eat it. But that's not all there is to the picture. I recently listened to the Outlaw Ocean podcast, and it kind of horrified me for how the fishing industry works. Now, I eat a lot of seafood. The very fact that we call it seafood is interesting. But the fishing industry involves considerable amount of human slavery. It involves unsupervised, unregulated overfishing. Finding out that 20% of the sea bass out in the market today was caught illegally was kind of distressing. And, it goes on and on and on. It really got me when it was talking about farm-raised seafood. Go get some farm-raised salmon. Well, that's not destructive, is it? Well, the salmon, maybe not so much. But what do the salmon eat? They eat fish meal. Salmon are carnivores. And so these terrible, slave-infested, environmentally destructive fishing practices like deep trawling are used to catch what they lovingly call trash fish and grind them up into fish meal to make food for the prettier, cuter, more food-friendly fish like salmon. So eating farm-raised salmon consists of eating indirectly enormous amounts of carelessly caught, environmentally unsound other fish. So that's a problem. Another thing that got to me was around beef. And so this was a rewilding plan that someone suggested when Biden, in one of his rounds of offering very grand and noble plans that will not be implemented until well after he's dead, was promising that we would have 30% of America return to the wild by 2030, which is all well and good, although which 30% is a problem. And because it's not neutral. So some people took him at his word on this and introduced a plan for rewilding parts of the West with corridors. And the rewilding is centered on wolves and beavers, which, without going into it, are keystone species that have all sorts of knock-on effects to improve diversity and environmental health for all sorts of life, plant and animal, even microbes. They goes as far as, reducing wildfires. So it's a big deal. Now, out in the West, there are many protected areas for wolves. National parks, certain national forests, a lot of other publicly owned land. It is not legal to hunt or trap wolves. They are allowed to roam free. It's great. If everything could be like Yellowstone, but not everything is like Yellowstone. And much of America's public land in the West is leased to cattle farmers at a loss to the taxpayer. We subsidize this pretty heavily. They are paying a lease, but the lease they are paying does not cover the cost to the taxpayer to maintain the land in a way that it works for open range cattle grazing. And cattle are, as John Muir put it, hoofed locusts. They eat all sorts of stuff, but they don't eat everything. So they're kind of a mess for the environment. Even the seemingly wild areas where cattle are being raised. So if you drive through the less civilized, more off-road parts of the West, you see a lot of open range cattle country. Sometimes you wind up at a dead stop waiting for the cows to get off the road. Well, those cows are making a mess. So what these people suggested was building corridors connecting these various wolf protection zones that already exist from the Sierra Nevadas in California up around through Idaho and Wyoming and Montana down into Colorado and New Mexico, building a single giant wolf and beaver habitat, which is a beautiful idea because it would greatly improve the genetic diversity between these clusters of animals. And the problem is a lot of the corridor land that they proposed is land leased to cattle farmers. And one of the things they pointed out is that while we talk about the importance of all this open range cattle to the beef industry, it's 2% of the cattle raised in America. It's not a key part of the beef industry. It just takes an enormous amount of land for this very inefficient way to raise cows. And if we return some of that land, not even all of it, just some of it, to true wild, it has all sorts of wonderful knock-on effects. But then you're dealing with the fact that the cattle farmers of the West, the cowboys, are the Americanists of all Americans. And they have political power disproportionate to their numbers that would make the coal industry blush. Keep in mind, the coal industry employs fewer people than Arby's. Fact check me. Look it up. It's really kind of scary. So, we could, as taxpayers, as the people who own this land, just take it away from them, say you can't raise cattle here anymore, we're going to give it back to the wolves, because they don't want wolves around the cattle for obvious reasons. But it's going to be a very difficult challenge. But it really got me thinking about how we raise food. And oh, sorry, my nose is beginning to run. It's a little cold out here. So this pushes me into an unusual position of, I mean, as, a nice foodie, progressive type, seems, organic, minimal chemicals, reduced tillage techniques, etc. are right? Because they make cleaner, nicer food. But they are much less efficient. It takes a lot more land to make your nice, organic, low impact food than it does to do something that has chemicals and has more aggressive tillage and such, but produces a lot more per acre. And getting into the subject of rewilding has made me much more attentive to the sheer land involved in agriculture, the amount of land involved in agriculture, especially open prairies and arid areas. I'm a lifelong Midwesterner. I've always grown up in the corn and soybeans of Illinois and Iowa and Minnesota. And, we could do better. We could make that smaller. Yeah, it's nice to have a butterfly preserve here and a butterfly preserve there, but wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't completely stripped of butterfly food between the two reserves? And so forth and so on. There's much to be said for rewilding with corridor connections that link all of these currently isolated protected areas. So this has got me thinking a lot about, well, maybe this intensive agriculture is beneficial to the environment, although that's a little counterintuitive. But what we do right now agriculturally is just obliterates the environment, and it's going to take an enormous amount of effort to be able to feed 8 billion people and, eventually 11, 12, 13 billion by the end of the century without famine, without food scarcity, and through whatever changes in our agriculture are inflicted by global warming and the changing atmosphere and changing weather patterns. So this has me thinking a lot more about vertical farming and hydroponic farming and all that sort of sci-fi stuff, which is interestingly thought-provoking, but also sounds like it's potentially expensive. Hi, puppy. Good dog. This dog hates me. Good for him. Anyway. So, yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going to land on this. This is stuff deep in the category of I might be wrong. I am often wrong. I am rethinking a lot of things about my relationship with food, with the beauty of natural grass-fed beef, with organics, with a lot of things. And I don't know where I'm going to land on this yet. But one thing for sure, I'm going to try to cut back on my meat consumption.